Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. We are so glad that you're here on WABE. It is debate day when we are taping this, the big presidential debate day that will take place here in Atlanta, sponsored by CNN. Our strategists are here, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson. We've been talking about it all week. I think you heard us earlier this week, kind of setting up the day, and now we're here. And it's an all-important debate. Would you guys go into this debate saying whoever wins this debate may win Georgia? Is that fair to ask at this point? Tharon?
Well, I think the first thing is that you got to look at this, the historical nature of this debate. You know, this is the first time in presidential history where a debate has actually been this early. Mm-hmm. You know, congratulations to CNN for having this debate. You know, we're hearing that this could be one of only debates. I mean, we could have two, but this debate is so important for a few reasons. Number one, it sets the tone for the rest of the campaign. There's going to be so many words used, so many moments that both campaigns will be able to edit, to basically use AI probably to tamper with, to use it against their opponents. But also it'll be a lot of good moments, a lot of good sound bites where these people in the campaign have been working very hard with their candidates to get them to drive home. But here's the advice I would tell the Biden-Harris campaign, and I hope that they're listening, as many of them I know have been in Atlanta all week. Infrastructure. You are a president who's done more for infrastructure in this country than any other president, right? Donald Trump promised us infrastructure dollars. It just didn't happen. You're coming to Atlanta, Georgia, very close to where we just experienced a water outage, right? And then, you know, water and sewer is so important to every American city. But Atlanta, we experienced a water and sewer crisis. And, you know, shout out to Mayor Dickens and others, Fulton County, Cobb County, DeKalb County, who all came together along with the Corps of Engineers and the federal government to basically communicate with the public about the best path forward. It would be a tremendous opportunity for the Biden-Harris campaign if the president can announce something during the debate or leading up to the debate saying that, hey, I witnessed what happened. In my infrastructure plan, we're going to do A, B, C, and D to make sure that what happened in Atlanta won't happen again. And I mean, and you want to know what I think would be a turning moment if he does that, because it then forces Donald Trump to talk about what he didn't do for cities, because he's going to come with the whole rhetoric that all these crime-ridden cities that are led by Democratic mayors, I mean, that's going to happen. We know that playbook. But the Biden-Harris campaign needs to focus very specific on what they've done for Atlanta, what they've done for Georgia, and what they will continue to do as far as infrastructure to make sure that this system that is so needed by so many of us is improved.
So, Tharon, you were just talking about infrastructure, and Senator Ossoff is making a big announcement in the Atlanta area today.
Yeah, Senator Ossoff is in East Point, Georgia, holding a press conference basically with Mayor Ingram. And he's basically talking to families and local leaders about ways that he can strengthen water infrastructure. And, you know, I mentioned this, that I think that infrastructure is going to be such an important role that the federal government will play in helping cities improve these infrastructure. And so what he's basically saying is that he wants to expand authorization to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who stepped in, by the way, to help the city of Atlanta recently. And this bill would amend the Water Resources Development Act of 1992. And while it's not necessarily Atlanta specific, there's different cities, particularly that would be involved in this. And I think also one of the things that he's looking at too, Lisa, Henry County, Clayton County, Muskogee County, and several coastal Georgia counties also need some of these similar upgrades. But he's starting in East Point, which is right next door to Atlanta. And I think that this is a very, very important issue that the senator is leading on.
Brian, do you foresee the first question tonight being about infrastructure? And if not, how, you know, where will that fare in terms of topics being thrown at the two candidates tonight?
I think there's always smart to localize the debate for the national format. It needs to be localized to get started, and then we can kind of, you know, funnel into the other questions. If I'm Joe Biden's campaign, to Tharon's point, and I might hold a news conference before the debate with Mayor Dickens, for example, and announce something on infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a way to get 2 licks at the sucker while he's here in Atlanta, to be able to get some local coverage as well as all the national coverage that is going to come, particularly as the Biden campaign is still insisting that it's going to invest resources in Georgia, even though, you know, frankly, they're putting more emphasis on the blue wall states of the North Midwest. They've sort of acknowledged that that's the case. But whenever I turn on broadcast news, which mainly I watched over the weekends, I'm seeing a lot of Biden campaign spending. So we know just from that metric alone that they're pouring a lot of money into Georgia still. When it comes to questions, I think you're going to look at inflation and the economy being something that we see numerous iterations of as far as questioning goes. What would you do if, for example, okay, President Biden, you've been in office for 3 years, and we still have interest rates well over 6%. Americans have gotten used to numbers much lower than that. It's squeezing their ability to buy new homes, et cetera. I would also, on that, turn the page on Donald Trump as well and say, hey, tariffs make prices go up. Tax cuts will, put money into the economy, which would increase inflation. How do you square those things up? I think there's a way to go at both candidates on that issue and put them in a corner because, with Biden, it would be, okay, that second COVID relief package was unneeded. It poured way too much money into the economy, and it created a lot of this problem. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act, even though it funded some stuff like infrastructure that we need, it also poured a lot of money into the economy, which is pro-inflationary, not anti-inflationary policy. So both guys have some answering to do. Both guys are going to face tough questions as far as how their policies would impact this issue that is top of mind for voters. And then secondly, it is in immigration. And we know exactly what Donald Trump is going to do. He's going to use these stories like Lake and Riley. He's going to be in Georgia being able to point to a crime that's 60 miles away that horrified the nation, being able to mention the newer news about sexual assaults by illegal immigrants in New York. Those are things that bring this issue to life. He's able to pin that on the incumbent, the guy who has got his hands on the reins as we speak. And he's going to say, on day one, I'm going to close the border. Joe Biden's had 3 years and he hasn't done enough. And in fact, he caused this crisis, this chaos that we're seeing now with failed policies. That's what I'm going to do if I'm President Trump. And Joe Biden's going to have to go to what Tharon was saying about, look, I tried to pass a bill and Donald Trump was against it, which is it's a reasonable comeback. I just think that his brand on the issue is already tattooed on him.
And real quick on that, Lisa, there is a executive order sort of play here where the president has been talked about. Could he do something from an executive standpoint to do something before this debate? So I wouldn't be surprised if he announces some. Yeah, because look, there's a lot of people who want to come to this country legally. They want to be able to do it in a very safe way. And I think, look, you think about our local economy. We benefit from immigration. And you talk to a lot of Republicans and business owners. They need the workforce. They need the skilled and the unskilled workforce. So immigration does play a part to that. But the one other issue I want to say is the economy. One of the things that I've been seeing in polling, and I hear a lot in Georgia, is people are working, right? People feel like they're able to get back to work. So the president's got to really, really talk about his record. He's got to talk about his plans to stabilize and reduce inflation, what he's doing to lower gas prices, working with our 2 U.S. senators. And so I think that the economy, getting a little bit more right conservative on immigration and making an infrastructure announcement, and look, Trump may do it too. So we got to make sure that they figure that out pretty quickly.
Will abortion factor in?
I think abortion is going to be talked about. You look at the days leading up to it. President Trump has, kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, B-Rob, what did he come out recently and say? It wasn't an ultra-right sort of stance. He said he does not support what? I think he said something recently.
He spoke to the Faith and Freedom Conference this weekend in D.C. and said he supports the exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother.
Right. So we've been waiting on that moment, Lisa, when he finally has been able to articulate, when he's not in a courtroom on trial for 34 felonies, to actually tell the American people where he is on abortion. So he did that finally leading up to this debate. So that gives the Biden team enough time to make that contrast of where President Biden is on this very important issues versus where former President Trump is.
We have known for a long time that President Trump was for the exceptions. He's been, he's never not said that through the years.
Yeah, but you've been talking on this podcast for a while that's one of the issues where you were waiting to see how moderate was he going to be at a time where his conservative base was pushing the other way. He's pretty much steadfast and stayed strong on his position.
Really, that's right. And part of what was really interesting in how he closed his comments on abortion to the Faith and Freedom Conference was, hey, guys, I know not everybody loves the exceptions. Not everybody is going to love my view on it, but you got to win elections. And I think he's very much signaling there that there is a line after which this is politically bad for Republicans. And he has always been aware of that to some degree. And, when he talks about it now, he's gone from not having discipline on it, like coming up with a different idea about having a federal rule at 16 weeks or not. And now you're seeing him speak much more disciplined on, look, Republicans have always said, put this into the hands of the states. I delivered that. So states, you go and do what you're going to do.
Lastly, the American people tonight, are they going to be seeing a convicted felon behind the podium, or we're past that now? The shock of it all that a convicted felon is running for president, but are we going to see that when he's speaking tonight?
I said this recently, Lisa. I know I have convicted felons in my family. I know people who have been convicted of felonies and have tried to actually have a second and third chance. And if you're a convicted felon in this country, there's certain jobs you can't work. There's certain jobs you can't apply for. There's just certain things you can't do. There's certain places you can't live. There's certain boards you can't serve on. There's certain licenses you can't apply for. There's certain certifications that you can't apply for. B. Rob and I talk about being an entrepreneur. So there are just a lot of things that once you are a convicted felon in this country, your life changes. Well, that is not the life for Donald Trump. This man, who was basically convicted of 34 felonies, about 12 jurors of his peers, will be able to not stand on that stage tonight and be the Republican choice and Republican nominee for president. But, in this country, because we have a constitution, he's still allowed to run for president. And so I just think that the Biden campaign has got to focus on, yes, this did happen, right? He clearly got convicted of these crimes. I think it was not only his actions, but I think his defense team failed him in the courtroom. They were never, ever able to present an alternative narrative to what the prosecution presented. But I think they got to also talk about fairness, right? And which I just tried to do. Because he's Donald Trump, because he's running for president, because he's this Constitution, why should he be allowed to still run for president? And I think that if you just go out there and say that he's a bad person, and Brian is, dreaming about this, the American people know that he's a bad person. They know that he's had racial discriminatory practices as a real estate businessman. We know that he said bad things about people of color. We know how he treated women. We know all these things that he paid hush money to make a relationship with a former porn star. Maybe she's still a current porn star. I don't know. Go away. We know all these things happen. And so I think you got to highlight that, but you got to also talk about fairness and how Donald Trump, because he is who he is able to basically have that privilege to run for president. And that's just not the type of person we need in the White House. I think that's got to be the crystal message going into this debate.
I think how we see him, Lisa, has to do with where we're coming from politically. I think we have our own framework through which to view Donald Trump. And what Tharon has done there is articulate very well the way Democrats see Donald Trump. Of course, it's not the way Republicans do. They see him not as a felon. They see him as a victim of political prosecution. They see him as a victim of lawfare, as they call it. So it makes him somewhat sympathetic. We saw him bust fundraising records in the wake of those verdicts coming down. It is people rallying to the cause, not because they want to support a felon, but because they want to support someone they see as being victimized. So I don't think that it's going to make a difference in this debate. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in this election. People knew going into that court case what they thought about Donald Trump. They knew the facts of the case. They know that Alvin Bragg campaigned on convicting Donald Trump. They know that this was a misdemeanor charge that got stretched through legal gymnastics into felonies. They know to some degree that he was charged for breaking campaign finance rules, which is in the jurisdiction, according to Congress, of the Federal Election Commission, not local DAs. So there are a lot of problems with the case. Was he convicted by people in Manhattan where the Democratic majorities are 90%? Yeah, sure. But Republicans are very easily, and I think many independents are able to discount that. So I don't think that that's going to make a difference. And look, I think Joe Biden will be tempted, and there will be many in his ear telling him to call Donald Trump a felon, to make a big point about that. But when you think that, 40-something% of Americans think that this is a politically motivated prosecution. Does Biden really want to reaffirm that and look like he is behind it all, that his DOJ is continuing to prosecute Donald Trump? I think it cuts both ways. I think the people who want to hear him say that, they're voting for Joe Biden no matter what. I think Joe Biden's got to make the case against Donald Trump on policy just as much as on character. And if they try to do too much on this criminal stuff, it's going to backfire.
All right. Well, again, it's set to take place tonight, and I'll be interested in hearing your reactions when we meet again next week. So thanks, guys, for your insight, as always, and have a good one.
Great to talk to you guys.
Let's go, Joe. We need a win tonight, baby.
Stay awake, Joe.
He'll be awake.